Hey folks, this is John St. John from CockroachDB Bytes, and it's been weeks since I've done a recording, so I'm not super prepared today for this session. I'm just going to wing it. We're going to talk a little bit about bulk deletes and a specific use case that I was looking at recently. Try to keep it short. It's going to be a little bit interactive. So let's set the stage a little bit. So suppose you have, often in Cockroach, we say it's best to split up any large operations into smaller operations. And there's a few reasons for this. I think the biggest one is probably just long-running transactions are not usually Cockroach's friend. They can lead to higher overall latency. They can create contention. So if you're deleting a lot of rows, particularly in maybe a table that has foreign key constraints or maybe even indexes, if you're trying to delete hundreds of thousands of rows at a time, it can be kind of problematic. It can take a long time. It can lock up other transactions. So generally what we recommend is doing them in batches. And we have some recommendations in our documentation about how to do that require writing some application code. And it just iterates through the rows and basically deletes with a limit and then comes back around and it keeps track of what the last row is it deleted, and then it tries to delete the next batch of rows. There's also a pretty easy way to do it with the Cockroach directly from the Cockroach client, and so this is based on one of my fellow CEAs, Glenn Fawcett's. He has a bulk move example on his blog. But essentially, what I've done here is I've actually created a temporary table that has a bunch of IDs that I want to delete. And then I'm going to use those to delete rows from existing tables. So let me go in. So what I've done is I've started Cockroach with Cockroach demo. So that just gives you an in-memory local version of Cockroach. And I created a database. So I just set it up, and I created a database just called D. And then within D, I created two tables. One is key, and that's going to just be a key and a value. And I kept it really simple. I just did an integer value just because it just made it easy for inserting data. But typically in Cockroach, for a primary key, you might want to use a UUID. And then we can show the create table for the temp table. And that's just going to be a bunch of keys that I want to delete from the original table, right? So you don't have to use this pattern of creating a temp table. The problem that I was looking at involved a temp table, so that's why I chose to reproduce this using a temp table. So the idea is that in batches, I want to select these IDs from the temp table and then delete them from the original table. So to keep this super simple, I just created 4 rows in the main table, and then from the temp table, I just created 2. So the idea is that I want to delete the first and second in batches. For this example, I'm just going to do a batch of 1 just so we can see how it iterates, keep it super simple. But you could do batches of 100 or 1,000, depending on what you want. So let's jump over and look at the SQL. So the SQL uses, maybe ignore the top part. So this is just running through the Cockroach SQL client, and it's got a connection URL, which is just local, and then it has a format of CSV. That's just an output format. And then it has the execute flag followed by a query. And then at the end, you'll see that it has this watch statement. So it's basically saying just execute this command over, or this query over and over. So once it finishes, it just sleeps for 0.001 seconds, so essentially no time. And then it just executes it again. And we're going to pipe that into Bash. So we're going to output what the result of this command, and then if when delete equals 0, we'll echo done, and then in macOS, returning will just exit out of the script. If you put an exit there, which would be normal, it actually closes the terminal. So yeah, so I just basically put that there to end early. So let's jump into the actual query. So what is it doing? Well, it's using what's called a common table expression, and that allows me to chain together two queries. So we'll focus on, so the syntax for common table is with daemon, or with some name as, and then the what we call a common table expression. And in this one, we're going to do a delete from the main table, T, where the key is in the temporary table, and we're just going to limit by 1. So if you were to just execute this part, that'd be really simple, easy to understand. You're just going to delete a row from K, or all the rows in K that match, or in T that match the temp table based on K, and in this case we're going to limit 1. And this is where you could make it 100 or 1,000 or whatever you want. And after that delete, we return the value of K into daemon. That's just our temporary table name. I think that was what Glenn called it, and so I just left it the same. Now when we move on to this expression, it's going to be able to use the results of this delete. So think of daemon sort of like a table. And after we've deleted the rows from the main table that match the temporary table, then we want to delete those rows. So for every successful delete from the main table, we'll delete those rows from the temporary table, right? So it's very safe. And this is our entire transaction. It's like a single statement transaction. And then because we have the watch, once it deletes those, it'll circle back around and continue until it hits this delete 0, and then is marked as done. So hopefully we understand that. I'm going to just go back to my terminal. Things will cooperate. Oh, and I just realized I'm terrible at not having my video block the screen. So I'm going to I'm going to show you once more. Show databases. I'm using T. Show create T. It's just a key value. Show create temp table. It's just, oh, sorry, that's show create temp table. It's just keys. We'll select from T. We see we have 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. Select from T temp. See, we just have 1 and 2. So the idea is it'll just iterate one at a time, just because we have the batch count of 1 through each of these, delete them. So at the end, we should see that we have rows 3 and 4 still exist, and 1 and 2 have successfully been deleted. So if I paste that command in, oh, actually, exit out of that for a second. Just move that down. Clear. Yeah, there we go. So we can see that whole statement. Hit return. We see it deletes 1, deletes the other, delete 0, and delete done. So now if I look here, I can't clear from there. Silly me. We can select star from T, so we see that only 3 and 4 are there. And if we select star from T temp, we see that all the rows have been deleted. So we've successfully been able to iterate just from the command line through each of these, I guess, batches of deletes to be able to do a bulk delete. And this would scale up to as many as you want. So you might pick a batch size of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. You can kind of experiment with it. And even if you have millions and millions of rows, you can just execute this, and then it'll just continue outputting how many it's deleting in each batch until eventually it exits. So this is a way just to break up these huge cleanup operations into a small series of steps. That's going to work better, especially if you're running this on a production system where there's a lot of queries and you don't want to create contention with the deletes which can occur. So that's all I have. Sorry if that was a little bit rough. Just getting back into it, experimenting with a new microphone, trying to have some fun and not take things too seriously. So enjoy and look forward to the next session.